Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Jaden, and today I'll be talking to you about antimicrobial resistance, or AMR for short. So to give a brief outline of my presentation, I'll first start with an introduction of myself, then get into the problem of antimicrobial resistance, discuss what some current efforts and future solutions could be, and then wrap up with my conclusion. So a little bit about me. I'm a grade 11 student or a rising senior attending the University of Toronto Schools in Toronto, Canada. Some extracurriculars I like to do are track and field, where I run the 1 through 400 meter races. I'm a drummer for my school's stage band, and I also participate in DECA finance. In the future, I hope to go into a field related to nanotechnology and use the skills I learned there to help solve some large global health issues. Speaking of which, let's talk about antimicrobial resistance. So this refers to the ability of a microorganism to resist antimicrobial treatments against it, resulting in persistent and oftentimes lethal infections in individuals. The World Health Organization predicts that AMR has the potential to skyrocket into one of the largest global health issues humanity has ever faced. In their 2018 fact sheet, they mentioned how it'll cause 10 million deaths a year by 2050, as well as $100 trillion US in economic losses related to healthcare. So there are a variety of reasons why AMR may occur, but the largest reason has been linked to agriculture. A 2016 study by Benno Kiel and colleagues from the University of Amsterdam showed direct correlation between the use of sublethal levels of antibiotics in agriculture and the generation of these resistant pathogens. So for a bit of background, antibiotics are widely used in many areas of agriculture, whether they be as growth hormones in animal feed, as hygienic agents, or as measures of preventing infections called prophylactics. So Turkiel and colleagues suggest that this type of use is often unregulated and that the antibiotics end up being given in doses too small to entirely kill the whole infection, specifically in bacteria. This results in the surviving bacteria adapting to the selective pressure that the antibiotics place and then rapidly developing resistance genes. So these resistance genes are then spread like wildfire to other bacterial colonies through methods like conjugation and other methods of horizontal gene transfer. And it's predicted by Turkiel that this actually results in 50 to 80% of all antibiotic resistance we see today. So the rest is thought to come from practices in the pharmaceutical industry, specifically with consumer use. So there are many instances when consumers will actually use antibiotics for viral infections, or as mentioned earlier, not taking the full dose of their medicine, which results in resistance being spread. So the effects of these practices are already widespread. According to the WHO, antibiotic resistance is present in every single country in the world, which puts an increasing strain on their healthcare systems as more infections continue to occur. In 2019, there were 2.8 million resistant infections in the United States alone, which results in 35,000 deaths. And this is a very alarming increase from the 23,000 deaths the previous year. According to Margaret Chan, the Director General of WHO, interventions like organ transplants and chemotherapy would actually become impossible due to the high risk of infection. And things like simple injuries like cuts and scrapes could actually be lethal. And it's scary because I'm sure many of us have had that as children. So despite current efforts like antibiotic stewardship, optimization, and research into new antibiotic classes to combat AMR, the levels of antibiotic resistance specifically have been steadily increasing year to year. We can actually see this by looking at the proportion of drug resistance in tuberculosis. So out of the estimated 480,000 cases of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, it is thought that 3.3% of them were resistant to 4 or more antibiotics. And this proportion has risen to 9.7% in recent years, despite global action against this. Additionally, the American Society for Microbiology announced the emergence of bacteria that is resistant to colistin back in 2017. And this is actually the strongest antibiotic available, meaning we have no more drugs to fall back on for more severe infections. Furthermore, the development of new antibiotic classes has been halted for over a few decades and shows no sign of continuing despite these circumstances. This is because research into these new compounds requires astronomical investment capital, time, and human resources, and also has a very low success rate, making this option highly unviable. So evidently, AMR poses a very large threat to the well-being of individuals all around the globe, and is an incredibly difficult problem to solve, regardless of its urgency, as I've already described. So this is why we need a multifaceted solution that has to be undertaken on the global scale, so that we can avoid the millions of deaths a year that we are on the trajectory towards. So we can look at the book called The Perfect Predator, written by Dr. Stephanie Strathty, where she describes how stakeholder alignment is necessary for a solution like this to happen. People, policymakers, practitioners, and pharmaceutical companies all have to work together to implement novel solutions and to help solve this problem. We can look at implementations like rapid, widespread testing to immediately discern infected individuals, what I like to call superbug surveillance system, allowing for the tracking of future infections and easier treatment of individuals in infection hotspots. We need robust national action plans and policies that allow for better infection control procedures and dissemination of AMR-related information. And finally, we need ubiquitous awareness of this issue so that individuals can take the necessary steps to keep themselves and the family safe. All of these implementations will help greatly in solving and mitigating the devastating effects of this issue. But above all, what I'd like to take you through would be a consideration of novel therapeutics that can help complement our already existing treatment methods to solve this issue. And one of these is phage therapy. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of this. It's actually a very high potential, personalized treatment that has been recently rediscovered in Western medicine. And it works by using these tiny alien-looking viruses that you can see on the screen called phages. And they preferentially bind to the bacterial cell, insert this genome into it, as you can see in these pictures. And then the genome, many factors in the genome actually hijack the cellular machinery of the bacteria so that the phage can reproduce and create more copies of itself. And then these prophages, copies of the phages are called prophages, they release a chemical called lysine, which literally makes the bacterial cell explode. So these are actually they're highly effective killers of bacteria, even bacteria with antibiotic resistance, which makes them a very high potential treatment. In fact, they kill 40% of the ocean's bacteria every day, and it is estimated that there are a whopping 10 to the power of 31 of them on Earth right now. Additionally, phages are very specialized. So for every bacteria that exists, there's a phage that will match it. So, and this is due to their receptor structure. So this makes them a very effective personalized medicine treatment. So the general process for creating a phage cocktail involves 3 steps: identification, amplification, and purification. So the identification involves finding a bacteria finding a phage in the environment that can actually kill a certain bacterial isolate taken from the patient. And then this is to see if there's compatibility and the phage can be used in treatment. If there is compatibility, the phages are then put in a colony of the bacteria, so then they can actually reproduce. And this is called amplification. Once the phages have reproduced and there's a high enough concentration of them, the basically bacterial carcass in that solution is removed, which contains harmful cytotoxins. So it's important that this is removed so the patient doesn't undergo septic shock. And now the phage cocktail will be ready to be delivered to the patient. So what's really exciting is that researchers are discovering new aspects of phage therapy and phage biology every day. And one of these aspects that's very interesting is the constant co-evolutionary war between phages and bacteria. We can actually look at this co-evolutionary war and see how bacteria evolve and actually exploit the way they evolve to deliver a better treatment method. So we can look at this cellular machinery here. It's very complicated, but it's called an efflux pump. And this is actually one of the main mechanisms of antibiotic resistance in many bacteria. And they use these pumps to pump out harmful chemicals from inside into the outside environment. So this is actually very, very effective at mitigating antibiotics. But we found that there are actually phages that can bind to this efflux pump and cause the bacteria to, in a sense, devolve these structures as they reproduce so that no future phage binding can occur. However, in doing this, while the phages cannot bind to the bacteria have lost their mechanism for antibiotic resistance. They're almost in what you can call a catch-22. And there's been many successful reported cases of this working, which makes it a very, very interesting and high potential approach. So unfortunately, as exciting as this is, there are still many obstacles to the implementation of phage therapy around the world. The first is that there's a lack of understanding of how phages work in the human body, and there's a big hurdle to getting clinical trials to happen. This is because there's also a lack of government regulations for how phage therapy and phage technology should be implemented in medicine, and also the fact that a personalized treatment like phage therapy is very complicated and always results in a different end product, making it very hard to claim intellectual property. So my hope in giving this presentation is that I can further accelerate the implementation of the solution by spreading awareness about it and inspiring all of you to contribute to this issue in whatever way you can as well. So that being said, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I'd like to give it a few acknowledgements, those to my friends and family for helping me and supporting me through this presentation, the Global Health Leaders Conference for creating this wonderful opportunity to present, and all of you for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask me or you want to discuss any more aspects, feel free to reach out. My email is jadenbhogal@gmail.com, and I'd love to have a discussion. Thank you again, and here are my references.